Hey, you watching? You want to see what it's like to play Death Knight? Come, I'll show you. Just step inside this wonderful closet of viewing.
Root.
What's up gamers, it is TreeSap Jake here with yet another video, and as you can see it is the festive season, so Merry Christmas to one and all. I've dressed up my orc looking rather dashing in her outfit. If you've been playing a lot of Death Knight like I have, there's a couple of things that might be going through your mind. Which spec to play? Is it Frost or is it Unholy in PvP at the minute? Obviously there were a few nerfs to Unholy with their mastery by 20% very recently. So what is their best spec to play right now? What are the advantages of it? These are questions that I'm going to try and answer so you don't have to. I'll do a summary. I'll be taking a look at their damage output, their utility, and their survivability before summarizing what I think is probably looking quite good going into Shadowlands Season 1. Alright guys, so let's get started. Taking a look at the damage. Let's start with Unholy. Unholy is big on the AoE. Some of the abilities like Unholy Pact are really big. They do a lot of damage with your Dark Transformation. Getting that damage out there every minute, less so because obviously Death Coil reduces the cooldown on Dark Transformation, is pretty big. You can also put it all together with a conduit that buffs the damage to your Dark Transformation and increases the length of it by 3 seconds. On top of that, there is a legendary called Frenzied Monstrosity, which increases the damage of you and your pet, as well as attack speed by 12%, so buffing that cooldown even more. The output of this can be scary, as you may have seen from some of my videos. You can get a lot of damage out. However, obviously after that damage, once you've pressed Dark Transformation, once you've used Unholy Assault and used Apocalypse, looking at Festering Strike, it doesn't really do that much damage outside. And even when you're bursting, Festering Strike does about 2k, Apocalypse sometimes does 3k, 4k. That is sort of once every minute and a half. You can lower that down to 45 seconds with some PvP talents, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. A lot of it is just a rot, quite a strong rot, but a rot that you have about every minute or so. When everything's up, Unholy really pumps, and I think that's what's really cool. We don't have the legendary yet, that Frenzied Monstrosity one, but when we do, I think it'll be really strong, and I'm excited to try that out. With Frost Death Knight, the damage is a little bit more consistent. I feel as if when I press Obliterate as a two-handed Frost, I feel like there's a lot of damage. When you press Pillar of Frost, you get a 15% buff to your strength, so your damage is hit hard. Your Obliterate's also crit when you get Killing Machine. Obviously when you press Frost Strike or Howling Blast to get those procs up during Pillar of Frost, it hits for about 5 to 6k. With gear, can go up to 10k. It does a lot of damage. With Chill Streak as well, you can do a lot of setups. That does a lot of AoE damage, a crazy amount actually. In one cast, maybe up to 35k. Obviously that's bouncing between 2 targets, but it can do a lot of damage. With the legendary that allows you to freeze people with Frostworm's Fury, Frost has a lot of damage output and a lot more consistent. Outside of the burst, it feels like I'm still hitting things and doing enough damage. However, even crazier is that Frost Fever hits a lot harder than Virulent Plague. So it's a little bit strange to see that my Rot as Frost does a lot more damage, more so than Virulent Plague. One slight advantage that Frost does have over Unholy is the fact that when they're doing their damage, there is no pet that needs to be killed. If you nuke down the pet, nuke down the Abomination, or the pet in Dark Transformation, and you can kill it fairly easily at the minute, then you get rid of all of their damage. Either they have to dismiss it and get rid of it, or blow it up with Sacrificial Pact. It can be quite a throw up. It means that a lot of your output, a lot of that AoE that comes from the pet is kind of stopped. Let's look at utility. In my opinion, in utility, Unholy DK is unmatched with Frost. Unholy Death Knight's pet's abilities are crazy. You've got a pet stun, and you've got a pet interrupt as well. Every minute, for about 18 seconds, you can press Leap, which then turns into a Bull Rush that interrupts spell casting and roots them in place. It is really great way to have a second interrupt when your Asphyxiate is down, when your grip is down, when you have no Mind Freeze. It is a really great way to do it. Obviously both classes have Abomination Limb, but with the pet, Unholy can interrupt and do a little bit more. Unholy also has the Abomination. Obviously replacing Army of the Dead, Abomination is a very nice ability to have when you're going up against stealthers. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that the Abomination aura, where they give Virulent Plague and pull you out and do general AoE damage, is massive. It is huge. It's almost like the old Starfall, where you can put that down somewhere and it will literally get anything out from BFA. It is a really great ability and very unmatched. I've managed to get lots and lots of stealthers, rogues, ferals, mages, hunters, everything out with that, and it means that their go in the beginning is actually stopped completely. There's nothing worse than actually being completely battered on the back foot from the get-go when you're going up against rogue mage in 2s or rogue mage in 3s or any of these sort of, thug cleave, that sort of thing. From the get-go, and you have that advantage, you'll be able to disrupt them, and a lot of people at sort of slightly lower rating panic at that moment. So with Abomination, not only are you doing extra damage, you're getting festering wounds up, and you can pull them out of stealth. It is a really, really nice ability. Obviously, sometimes with Death and Decay you can get them, but it's not nearly as useful or as impactful as Abomination. Frost, on the other hand, doesn't have as much utility in my opinion. It has an ability called Blinding Sleep, which I think is really nice. It is a talent, so instead of taking Asphyxiate, instead of the stun, you take Blinding Sleep. So in a cone in front of you, you basically disorient people for 5 seconds. You can grip the healer in, put Blinding Sleep on the both of them. They're stuck there for 5 seconds, put Chill Streak on, and you're doing a heckin' load of damage, especially with Pillar of Frost up. And that's a really useful ability. But outside of that, once you've used your Interrupt, once you've used your Grip and Abomination Limb, or even your Dragon with the legendary that stuns them, you don't really have anything else to stop spell casting or keep people on you other than Chains of Ice. However, what Frost does have is the ability to keep spamming your abilities. I often feel rune starved and runic power starved on Unholy. That's not so much the case with Frost Death Knight. You have Frost Strike, which uses not that much runic power, but you can press that a lot, and it does do a little bit of damage, about 1k, sometimes 2k, and with certain conduits you can buff your strength with it, which kind of keeps the damage uptime quite nice. And then obviously when you press Empower Rune Weapon, it is great. You get a 15% haste, and then instantly get 5 runic power, instantly 1 rune back, and then for the next sort of 20 seconds you get, every 5 seconds you get the same thing again. It means that during your burst you've got a lot of windows of opportunity to just absolutely slam home those obliterates and those howling blasts. It's really, really good, and it's very useful in the burst. You also have Remorseless Winter, which is an AoE slow and can do damage. That's up every 20 seconds, which really isn't that much. It is a really nice cooldown for every 20 seconds, so that's really useful. But it doesn't have much utility outside of that. In terms of keeping and knocking down other people, I feel as if Unholy wins on that front as a disruptor. Alright guys, let's take a look at survivability. Now on this front, again, I think Unholy wins. Now with Unholy you have the Spell Eater talent, which I think is an incredible talent. It obviously buffs AMS, it means that it lasts a lot longer, it means it absorbs a lot more, and it means that in these burst windows there is a lot more that you can stop, and that's really great. It synergizes super well with Death's Embrace, which is their legendary. It is a nice legendary that buffs AMS even further. It gives you a 24-second AMS, and it makes the absorb shield up to 14k, and any damage that is done and absorbed heals you. Now with Unholy, that means that any wizard cleave will struggle to kill you, and that's great and everything, and I think that's going to be really, really tough for them to handle. So obviously in that moment it's hard, it's super hard for them to deal with you. Obviously with Sacrificial Pact being, across all Death Knights, that is really, really useful. Slightly difficult for Unholy because a lot of the damage you get comes from Dark Transformation, so you definitely cannot sacrifice your pet during that period. That is a really tough decision to make, but with spamming your Death Strike, you do a lot of healing. There are conduits that you can take to up the healing on that one, but mostly the AMS bubble is incredible, and with Death's Embrace it synergizes really well, and Spell Eater, you become unstoppable into Wizard Cleaves. With Frost, you don't really have that, and one of the big problems that I see with Frost going into the future, when we can get 2 legendaries potentially, is that Frostworm's Fury, which is the one which we put on our wrists, shares the same as Death's Embrace. You might have to find a different slot to go on for either Frostworm's Fury or for Death's Embrace and see whether that works that way, but I think putting them together would be kind of hard. I think if we had that for Frost, then Frost would be almost unstoppable. It would obviously increase AMS a little bit longer, making it sort of very similar to Spell Eater and obviously healing you. Honestly, for Frost, you have a very small cooldown, of Icebound being DK wide is a good cooldown, but outside of that you have AMZ, your anti-magic zone, and that's really it. But one of the things that I think is really good for Frost is that you generate runic power, I feel, a lot better. There is a lot less downtime on runic power, a lot less downtime on runes. So honestly, when I'm off healing as Frost, I never feel too bad. I feel like I'm pressing Death Strike and it feels meaningful. Take Transfusion with that in 2s or 3s if you feel like they're going you, and you will never die. Like, you will have a lot of time to Death Strike yourself, kite, get away. You'll have a lot of options. You could probably survive going into some big classes. Obviously, you know, major burst potential is tough, but the Death Strike runic power is really, really nice on Frost. As I said before, I don't ever feel much of a downtime. Alright guys, so in conclusion, Frost or Unholy? Well, we talked about the damage, we've talked about their utility, and we've talked about their survivability. I've been playing a lot of both, and I really, really like both Frost and Unholy. I've really enjoyed their playstyles. They're so slightly different. I think with Frenzied Monstrosity, Unholy will actually match Frost, maybe with some of the damage, but in terms of actual output, I think Frost damage is crazy. It is really, really powerful. Like, despite the survivability, despite the utility of Unholy, at the minute burst damage is king, and I think Frost DK are the kings of that. My recommendation though is to play what you find is fun. I think get Frenzied Monstrosity legendary for Unholy Death Knight, play that into most of the melee comps, play maybe Death's Embrace into the Wizards if you feel it's necessary, but honestly, Frenzied Monstrosity will boost the damage for Unholy where the Mastery nerfs were lacking, and took that away. I think that will be a really, really good legendary to go for. Take Spell Eater into the Wizard Cleaves and just absolutely cleave people. That's everything from me. If you have any questions, obviously I answer them. Please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos. Obviously all the support has been fantastic. Hit me up in the Discord, PM me on Twitter if you have any questions. Let's talk. I'm more than happy to help. But otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.